Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. That's where you're at right now. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. My guest today is muralist Andy Pinder of Kids Art Murals. Andy is an incredible artist, and he has channeled his creativity and business focus into wall murals. He began his career as a commercial artist, and I'll let him tell you more about that as we get into the interview. But I just want you to listen to this guy's career trajectory and how he approaches his work and his clients. And I think that'll give you some real insight into why he is so successful. Uh, Before we get into the interview, would you take a second and if you're watching on YouTube, would you subscribe to the channel, please? If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, would you please give us a follow? And then I'm going to ask, would you recommend this channel and this show to others, other artists who are interested in making a living from their art? It's going to be beneficial to them. And I know the guests I have on they're just full of so much information and they're so encouraging. So with that being said, let's get into the interview now with Andy.
Okay, that's an outtake. Right, hi, my name is Andy Pinder. I have a company called Kids Art Murals, and I basically paint for children, hospitals, restaurants, play areas, special needs schools, especially. Quite a lot of work in those areas. Um, I do the occasional work for grown-up people as well, but predominantly it's for kids. And I kind of live in cartoon land most of the time. Although for the last 2 or 3 years, my work has kind of got further afield and far more detailed, really. A lot of jungle work, forest work, under the sea, murals. So anything and anything, really.
That's fantastic. And you had been pointing out to me that the are they they're not peacocks. What are they behind you? Help me with the bird's name.
Oh, these are red cap Japanese fighting cranes.
I mean, it's gorgeous, and you'd said as well that some people will presume that that is a wallpaper.
That's correct. Yeah, I've this is in a room of my house. It's like a guest room, but I've kind of used my house, especially during COVID and lockdown. I had a van full of paint and nowhere to go, so I thought, I don't know, I just started painting random walls across my entire house. So there's a big Asian influence upstairs because there's a Japanese geisha and mountains using foils and metallic paints, and based on a traditional Japanese artist was the influence. And this is obviously very chinoiserie style. And downstairs is a giant Amy Winehouse mural painted in puce pinks, purples, and yellows to match the decor of the house. So yeah,
That's fantastic.
it is. She's quite big actually. I think she probably stands 3 meters high. It's a massive portrait, but it's very kind of Andy Warhol pop art style. Very graphic. Yeah. I did something similar with Ronaldo and Ed Sheeran in a
Yeah,
young child's playroom.
I've
So
seen
that was
the Ed Sheeran. I've seen
yeah,
that. That's beautiful. I love your approach to that. It is a very graphic style.
it is very strong. Really good for accuracy as well.
Yeah,
It ensures the accuracy of the portrait for me anyway. That's probably my working technique.
yeah.
I know other artists use a lot of airbrushing and aerosols and stuff like that, but for the environments I'm working in generally, in special needs schools or in hospitals, I can't really get involved in, you know, paint sort of flying around in the atmosphere and paint drifting and settling on objects.
Yeah.
So my work tends to be mainly brushes and rollers and stuff like that. So, but again, it's evolved technique, a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, so
And
how did you get from there, the beginnings, like what did that look like to today?
okay, I have 3 granddaughters and a grandson. Before I started painting murals, I was a visualizer, a TV storyboard artist, illustrator and animator in the design industry, ad agency work, design consultancies. Long career on that from up to about 10 years ago. So 21 to 54. Basically, my eldest granddaughter appeared 12 years ago, and I painted flower fairies around her bedroom at skirting board height, sweeping leaves, having a cup of tea with a bee on a mushroom, all of those things. Very, very simple. And then from there, I painted my daughter's girlfriend's bedrooms and nurseries because they all decided to have babies at the same time. So there was probably about 10 of them with 10 different children. So I kind of worked my way around the children's nurseries, potentially, without realizing, building a portfolio, which I then took to the marketplace about a year later, and turned my back on my old career. So yes, it was kind of an accidental reinvention or an accidental career change, brought about because of my beautiful Rose, actually, my first granddaughter. So that's how it happened.
No wonder you had to retire. I mean, just the social aspect and then serving your family. That's good.
I have to say though, if I'd have known that there was a market for it, from what I know now, I may have jumped ship 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise that there was an appetite in England for it. Now, I don't think it's as predominant as it might be in the States or other parts of Europe, but I think most of the British public don't necessarily know that it's available to them, because they do struggle to find people like myself or muralists. Most English people don't really know how to say that word anyway. They always refer to mural, obviously, which is a woman's name.
It's the same, by the way, in America.
Is it really?
Yeah.
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 Could you do a mural for me?
Yeah. How much is a mural? That's yeah. It's funny. People do ask very, very innocent, naive questions,
Sure.
which do make me smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
really good.
But the common one is, how much is a mural? And I think, well, until you let me know what it is you want me to paint, I can't really give you a price or an informed price. So
yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Because we live in a different time. We live in that time where you can go to Amazon and see that this is 42 pounds or dollars or whatever, and it'll be to me in 2 days, and it's done.
Yes.
And I get it.
Yeah. Or common one is buying a sticker. I mean, I'm not keen on stickers or vinyls naturally, because most people don't really know how to apply them correctly, and the surface of the paint they're applying the vinyl on may be too much orange peel or the roller texture that a painted wall puts on the wall, and therefore you get little air pockets where the glue dries at different rates and becomes very brittle. Then the vinyl starts to curl and contract, and then it starts peeling off, which is okay. But I don't think they're very good. They tend to destroy the plasterwork and paintwork beneath them when they come off. So they're not good for my business either. But then again, the other one is of these massive giant prints that are being produced, which per roll is quite expensive. And then I think sometimes you need to get somebody specialist in to apply them to the wall. Um, a wall furnishing kind of
Hmm.
person.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
printed wallpaper, right? And
it is
then
printed wallpaper, yeah. And by the time you've bought a few rolls or a few drops of that for the image and pay somebody to apply it to the wall, you might as well get a muralist.
right.
I mean, to be completely honest, the reason I get appointed to do a lot of special needs schools is because the children sometimes, once they see an edge, they can start peeling it
Mm,
off.
yeah.
And the special needs schools, they do have a lot of pictures mounted very high on a wall, something that cannot be lifted or raised. Um, so yeah, from my point of view, it's a great area to paint in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No. That makes a lot of sense, and the benefit. Oh, just crumple paper right over.
literally it's the mostly autism, the errors and challenging behaviour.
Yeah.
Um, and if they're varnished, then they can just be wiped over. So I do generally protect my murals with some kind of varnish afterwards for either autistic children, schools, or young children that might, have a favourite Nutella, or I shouldn't say Nutella, but other brands are available, chocolate spread and stuff like that. But the sticky fingers, because my whole house I've had to kind of protect from my grandchildren running their hands up and down the staircase, and so
Well, and I
yeah,
mean that's an important point because I do the same on my murals that are going to be heavily trafficked, right?
yes, that's the
Um,
one. Yeah,
and you'll see everything from a little bit of pen and pencil to um, people. I mean, I guess I really don't see scratches because the varnish does well,
it
and I
does. Yeah,
I tend to use. I guess it depends on the project, right? But I'll use a flat latex wall paint and then mix whatever colors I need in a limited palette and add some other colors as needed if I can't mix that specific color. And then I was using this Modern Masters varnish, and it was a flat, and
yeah,
I'd do 2 coats of that, and that'd be really nice. So I guess it depends on the effect you want too, right? If you want
it
it.
does. I mean, obviously, the British market for paint description is different to the States.
Hmm.
Ours generally referred to as a vinyl acrylic paint, but that's not the same as an artist's acrylic.
Right.
I mean, like you, I use wall paint to paint my murals because the paint is designed to go on masonry. Whereas I have seen some muralists use artist acrylic paint, which is designed for paper and card, and it tends to be very, very transparent. Doesn't have the same kind of body as an emulsion paint. And like you, I have a set palette to work with, and then the shades of that color I'm using will go down into 6 levels, as it were.
Yeah.
And then if I need to mix, I'll mix them. But generally, I try to kind of keep within the shades of 1 to 6. So that gives me enough color scope.
That's interesting. I like hearing that process. So let's do this. Let's go back to your pre-professional career,
Sure.
and what did life look like for you then, and what led you into the career that you held before you painted the murals?
Okay. Well, my career spans pre-computer. Um, so everything was done on what was known as a layout pad. Everything, all the adverts were drawn, all the typography was hand rendered. And then, of course, Mr. Jobs came along and gave us all these wonderful computers to work on. And that changed everything completely. So then I had to learn a whole new process of working. But I used to combine traditional methods. I draw a lot of stuff by hand, take it through Photoshop, and then color it up and render it that way, or use a Wacom tablet. But migrating from A2 or A3 or A4 image size to a kind of 3 meter by 2 meter wall was quite liberating, actually. It doesn't phase me. Don't get me wrong, I don't do the end of buildings like some of these people.
Right.
And that they are super talented, and I don't really know how they do that. But yeah, painting a large corridor or a bedroom wall is far more liberating than working on a A4 or an A3 area or A2 even. I just find bigger better, really. Yeah, it's good.
I'm with you, and I think I don't know that I know why I like it bigger. I think I started on murals when I was a child
Right. Okay.
at school, and then when I started to work on the parameter of paper, um, it felt limiting. It felt too tight.
Yes. Yes. Plus, my eyesight's going a bit, so the bigger's better now.
Me too. If there's
Yeah.
anybody under 45 watching this right now, your time is coming. You'll know what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Don't laugh too
Absolutely.
hard.
I think it was mid-40s before I got my first +1 pair of glasses. So yeah,
Yeah, glasses and a lot of light. I need brighter
yeah,
light.
absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. In fact, now I use the light rings the
Yeah,
YouTubers tend to use. I've got a large. Oh, you've got one there.
I've got one right off to my left.
Mine's
That's
on a
why it
job
looks
at
so
the moment.
beautiful.
Yes, mine's on. Well, especially makes the eyes look lovely.
Mm.
Mine's on a job at the moment, so I've got
Yeah,
a bedside light and overhead light.
it's
But
working.
yes, I do find that that is very good for a working light. But also, I put a time lapse camera on the tripod and film.
Yeah.
But it's very good working light. Before I used to have some LED kind of builders lights, but they were a bit clumsy and heavy to use, actually.
Yeah. So the work you did, you talked about storyboards and you were in
Yeah.
advertising, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so it's apparent that you're a skilled draftsman where drawing and
Yes.
creating an
Yes.
image comes together.
Yeah.
Um, and then you came out of the analog world like I did with drawing and painting, and then digital comes along, and I'm assuming you worked in Illustrator and Photoshop,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's a different language, right? Like you can get very similar results and maybe the same results nowadays, but I was just speaking with a friend this morning about the program Procreate. Do you use that at all on the
No.
iPad?
No.
But it's like a $12 or a $14 program,
Okay.
and it's almost like somebody took Painter and
Yes.
Photoshop and
And
meshed
combine
them
them.
together. And there's
Yeah.
things it can't do, but I do almost all of my work on there now, all my digital work.
Okay.
And so I highly recommend it to you. I think you'd enjoy it,
Yeah.
because you can get the tools are more natural. The airbrush or the paint brushes or the pencils, you get the grain, you get everything in there. But
Right.
but I guess what I'm getting at is you had this profession where you built all of these skills, and um, then I would suspect you had to learn a fair amount of technical skills as well
Yeah.
from maybe like you're talking about being aware of lighting and what somebody is going to shoot on either moving film or digital now, I guess, but also still photography, and you were just exposed to a wide variety of topics and
Absolutely.
constraints.
Yeah. I mean, during my sort of advertising days, I used to do a lot of photo shoots, but that was mainly stills, still life, product range. But it still gave you an understanding of lighting something and dimension and depth of fields, um, which again, it's all information that you carry around in your mind and then you apply it later on in life. I mean, generally, if I'm painting a mural, I try to keep the light source as if I'm receiving it from the window. So everything will generally be on one side rather than contradicting the natural light that comes into the room by putting my highlight on one side and shadow on the other, which conflicts with the natural light source of the room. But I think I've become a better painter or better illustrator since I've started to paint murals, because I have had to do such a variety of different styles, almost like a mural magpie, basically. I can do anything from manga to, I wouldn't say I'm super photo finish, but I can do, well, my clients seem to think a lot of my work is 3D or HD. Somebody referred to my work.
HD, I love that.
I think
HD trompe l'oeil.
yeah, I don't use, I mean, airbrushes are brilliant, but sometimes they do have a certain look and feel to them, whereas brushwork will give you a different kind of detail. So, but they're all good, and it's just how people use them, really. But yeah,
If I may break in, so it's really interesting. My experience early on was I airbrushed everything. That's what I
yeah,
came out of high school doing. I picked up an airbrush and I became adept at it. And then I want to say about 5-6 years into it, I was done for the moment with airbrushing.
yeah,
It's like enough. And then and it was just because, if you have too much lobster, it's great, but it's still too much lobster,
yeah,
right?
yes,
And then I started to paint with the brush. And I would say they both taught me so much about color and approach and painting. But unless you're really trying to hide airbrush, it's
yeah,
difficult to hide it, unless that's what
yes,
you're adept at and you're going to do. And painting with a brush, it demands a different command of skill, in my estimation. I think I've become a better painter because of the paintbrush. Now, if I had flipped that, like if I
yeah.
painted with brush and then went to airbrush, maybe I'd be telling the same story. But that's just been my experience.
No, I think I'd agree with you there. I also think that it's taught me to look harder and more at different textures, lighting, trees, tree bark, those kind of examples where you really you need to look at something in order to understand the shape, and then how am I going to paint that, achieve that effect to get that texture within the mural. And I don't know what kind of brushes you use. Do you use decorators brushes or
It it
artist brushes?
Sometimes it depends. Artist brushes for fine details,
Yes.
but then I'll use a 1 inch, 2 inch, three. I'll just use a regular
Rules,
paintbrush, but
right.
whatever it takes.
Yeah. I funny enough, I come across these brushes about 4 years ago now, which I bought from China. They were simple Chinese badger hair brushes. And I have to say, I have never come across a brush that allows wall paint to flow off of such a fine haired brush.
Hmm.
The artist brushes I use, well, they're obviously nylon, but they don't seem to allow the paint to flow so freely off of the hair, basically. So yeah, I've had these for years, and I've got a whole kind of packet of them, but I've only used 4 because the hairs don't fall out. They seem tough as old boots, but yeah, they serve me very well. They're very good.
Well, I'll have to
Yeah,
remind you, or email you and ask you to send me the link for those. I'd love to try those out.
literally, I just got them off of Amazon.
Okay.
Not particularly expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a range of about 3 different lengths and styles.
Okay.
But they're not expensive, because some artist brushes can be shockingly expensive here in the UK.
In here as well.
And I'm thinking, all I'm going to do is I'm going to pound that hair or bristle into a brick wall. Do I really want to spend that amount of money when I can buy something considerably cheaper that would, you know, offer me the same result? So
Yeah, if I could paint with the cheapest brush in the world and it was
yeah,
efficient, I'd do it. I
well, I think you probably can do it actually, because it's down to technique, isn't it? Really,
yeah. Well, and efficiency, I guess. I mean,
efficiency, technique, yeah,
if the
and
hairs
no,
are pouring out of the brush, that's no fun.
oh no, that's no good. But yeah, I always keep a set of tweezers and scissors in my kind of toolbox, as it were. Any kind of rogue hairs, other than ones coming out of my nostrils, get plucked out.
So, so you made this transition. What went into that transition, by the way, from when you retired? Were you just, was it just time? Were you just ready to retire, or?
Oh, I'm not retired. When I
I
broke
don't
away.
mean, no.
Oh,
I mean from the commercial world.
um, do you know? I think it was the reward uh, that it gave me for creating something that a tiny little audience was so grateful to receive, and the parents were so amazed, really, that what you could achieve. Um, and it just made me feel so much better about what I was doing professionally. And now, and then I thought, before in the advertising agency, you could, well, in fact, the straw that broke the camel's back was I worked for a major client, an aeronautical client, um, and they tied me up with a presentation stroke animation project for 2 months. They then took 5 months to pay me. So that was 7 months with basically virtually no cash flow. And the flip side of that, when I went into the domestic market to paint murals, people were not throwing money at me necessarily, but they were quite happy to pay 20%, sometimes 50% up front, and then they pay the balance on completion. So, you know, cash flow wasn't an issue particularly, still isn't. Um, People are very, very good at paying, but I don't do murals for businesses. I've kind of steered away from the commercial business, probably on the same things that haunted me when I was working in the design industry. That once you get into the corporate side of things, then you get into this different payment system, and I don't really want that. Basically, I'd rather give my skill set to a domestic market, or people in need, or hospitals, than go and paint corporate offices with some nice graphic that they're going to have in their kind of presentation room or meeting rooms. So yeah.
So you had essentially, as your granddaughters were born, you started working on murals while you were doing this other work,
Yeah,
this commercial work, and then at some point there was enough there that you said, okay, I'm going to let this commercial stuff go, and I'm going to go into these private
yeah.
murals and
I
commission.
kind of, well, because I was self-employed, I think it was down to a very easy overlap. So social media helped me launch my mural work, and it still does, because every person I paint for becomes an ambassador for my business. And most people have more than one child, so I get to do siblings' bedrooms as well. And then what's happening now, recently, this year, or sorry, last year, I had about 3 or 4 repeat clients that their children have grown up, maybe 5 years later.
Okay, yeah.
Now painting a different style. I mean, that Ed Sheeran games room, the little boy and girl I painted for, they were 5 and 2 years of age. Now they're sort of 10, 13. So it was Avengers then, and now it's like Ed Sheeran, football, every single aspect of those children's relating to what their interests are, from chocolate spread to Mickey Mouse and popcorn,
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran, all the music influences and all the sports influences kind of thrown together in this street art, gritty kind of style. Not my usual style, but the client requested Banksy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted more street art, Banksy kind of style. So it was kind of strange for me because I had to paint what I would normally paint and then vandalize my own work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of a strange experience when you start throwing paint across the room at it. I didn't go too mad. It was,
were you painting with brush to try and match spray paint?
I didn't use any spray paint on that. No, I did everything with a brush and did it really quickly.
Yeah.
Some of the sort of lyric references were done as fast as I could hold the brush to paint it.
Yeah.
And it just looks like, somebody's come along and vandalized the work in a very deliberate way. But I really tried. If I'd spent 2 days painting a giant portrait of Ed Sheeran, I didn't want the paint to end up in the wrong place.
Right.
So I was semi-deliberate in the way I was throwing the paint around. But, that was a good fun project.
So when you made that transition from the corporate clients, so were you freelance the whole time? Were you working for yourself?
No, initially my career, I started as a junior visualizer when I was 21, and then went through the ranks of visualizer, art director, senior art director, creative director, and then I kind of went freelance because I started to pursue interests outside of business, which basically meant I needed more time for myself.
Yeah.
So less work and more playtime. So I went freelance, which gave me the freedom of singing freelance.
Yeah.
But it was okay. But sometimes it was tough. You used to go a while without work, and then you kind of have a recruitment consultancy, basically finding you work.
Yeah.
To migrate to Murals was easy because my mindset was always I was self-employed anyway. So it wasn't like jumping off a cliff into nothing. It was just, can I get the business? Can I get this type of work? And I found most of it came to me. But I also got involved with special needs quite early on to either just do general decorating and feature walls or sensory rooms that had different lighting aspects, different paint effects, three-dimensional work that would be either jigsawed out of MDF and then painted and then sort of basically fixed to the wall. So it had more tactile texture into the mural. And then I even got involved in painting wardrobes. I did a chap, he was 75. He was a massive, massive Harry Potter fan. So I painted a double aspect mural. And then I was invited back to paint his very, very tired wardrobe. So I took all the wardrobe doors off, painted all the inlays with all the characters from the Potter films, and then put them back on. So the value of that wardrobe must have rocketed. I said, when I left, I said, I don't want to see this on eBay, because what was a couple of £100 wardrobe probably went up to about £1,000 or more. I don't know. But so again, anything that's flat, you can paint. It doesn't have to be a wall. It can be an item of furniture.
Yeah.
Everything and anything.
So when you made that transition, it sounds like you had when did the schools come along, these special needs schools?
They came along probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. And then,
But the residential care homes were special needs, but they were people that had grown up.
yeah.
So they'd always been in care all their lives. But the special needs or residential care homes in the UK, the service users can be pretty much any age, from early 20s up to 70s or 80s, and they're there for a long time. Or these days they tend to be in supported living units, so they kind of have their own flat. Carers go in and make sure they're okay.
And so did that become your niche? Would you say, is that your specialty, and the bulk of your work comes from that world?
It doesn't anymore, no. Most of it is special needs schools, or mainstream schools, which I actually love painting because the kids are so inquisitive and
Yeah.
basically nosy. And I spend far too long in those kind of environments because they slow you down. They come out like, when are you going to paint the pirate?
Yeah.
When are you going to paint? Why didn't you paint the pirate yet? And they obviously think you're going to do a couple of days, and they don't realise that the process can take, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days or more, depending on how big the wall is and what the content is. But they do make me laugh. I did a job about maybe a year ago, and it was a space themed mural because there was 2 classes that were studying space, and so I painted a floating astronaut, a Apollo 13 capsule actually. But the kids thought, yeah, oh yeah, it's painting the Death Star. It's the Death Star it's painting. And I said, no, you go back in and you'll learn all about this in your space history. It's not the Death Star. But I then got 100 kids just to help paint stars, which literally was just a blob on the wall. Yeah, I had 100 kids helping with that, which is quite funny. So, and sometimes there's some very sad things as well. There was one little girl who lost her mum when she was 4. And so we both painted this special star for her mum, and it was very distinct because it had a star burst. So it's obviously the crosshair with a little glow around it. And then she helped me paint it, and then she went back into class, and I turned to the wall, and I just sobbed my heart out because she knew her mum had died, and she didn't realise that her mum was not coming back till she was a couple of years older. So I think she was like 8 at the time. And yeah, you kind of hear stories like that, and you think, wow. So we painted a special star for her mum, and I told her it was going to go on my YouTube channel. So yeah.
Well, I think you hit on something, or you actually shared on something that is incredibly important, and it is beneficial for you, is that you have empathy for a situation and for people, and that allows you to give something very unusual to the customer.
Yeah. I don't know about you, John, but I think along the way you do meet certain people that have particularly big struggles in their life. I literally, just before Christmas, I completed a mural for a little girl who's 10 and she's terminally ill. She may live another 3 months, she may live another 3 years. They don't know. But she spends all of her time in a hoist going up and down a corridor of her house. So I painted the whole of this corridor for her, and she lays on the floor looking up at the ceiling and the walls. And I painted virtually everything in that corridor that is of interest to her, from Peppa Pig, trolls, a blossom tree, pink clouds, butterflies, and a fox, a frog, and all these other visual kind of metaphors for her brothers and sisters, because her sister was known as Frog, and she had another brother, and he was a fox. But yeah, it does move you. It is really, really moving. Especially, have you worked in hospitals at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. I've done about 3 or 4 jobs in a hospital, one hospital in particular. And I've gone from the surgical wards where they basically, when a child's had an operation, they put the child against the mural wall I've painted so they can wake up and see this lovely forest, which is a nice thing. And then from there, some midwives saw my work, and then I got invited into early birthing centre, early pregnancy units, and painted something really, really delicate and lovely in there. But you have to work night shifts, which can be quite tiring. And then from there, I got invited to paint in a birthing pool. So you're painting, and it's quite emotional anyway. But when you hear women screaming as they're going into labour, and yeah, it can make you well up a bit.
Yeah.
So it can be quite emotional, happy and joyous and sad and whatever as well sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and I think you're talking about, or you're explaining the bonus for the artist and the creator is that it, I'll speak for me. When I was young, I thought a lot more about money and income and the things I could do and the things I could buy and
Yeah.
and as I've gotten older throughout the years, I'm as interested in the customers and what's going on in their lives. And you because you're an artist, you're almost a bit like a fly on a wall at places
Yes, totally.
where you're exposed to the lives of people,
Yes,
and it's a real honor
it is.
to be trusted with that, right?
Invariably, for some reason, I don't know why, most of my clients in a domestic setting, they like to feed me and make me lunch, which is terrific. And I've kind of eaten all around the world, really, because the client base is anything from sort of East Asia, India, Thailand, all of those. So I could be working for somebody and I'll have a selection of curries for my lunch. And then I might have something, a nice Thai dish or something like that. And obviously the usual British fare of a pie or a bacon roll. But I don't know why, the generosity of people is amazing. But yeah, you do get involved in people's lives. And I tend to always try to encourage my clients to have a little paint as well. And they say, oh no, I can't, I'll mess it up. I said, if you mess it up, I'll paint over it, it's okay. So I get my clients to maybe paint a flower or a toenail of Dobby out of Harry Potter or something like that. even some of the children who may be sort of 5 years or plus, just so they can take ownership. And maybe a year or 2 down the line, mummy says, well, I painted that flower. So it kind of gets them involved, really. And they never forget where they've painted it either, which is quite a sweet thing, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So
it's normally I work on a fixed fee basis anyway, because people like to know how much they're going to be charged. And that is equated to how long I think it might take to paint. But invariably, I'll go over on days because I have to be happy with what I'm painting before I leave that place of work. So if I go over to that, I mean, the worst, I went over 5 days once in the school because I start that going back to that space mural. Initially, I had 4 planets to paint, and I thought to myself, do you know what? Some child is going to come out and say, where's Neptune or where's Saturn? And so I ended up painting the entire solar system. And I went completely over my agreed budget. Obviously didn't charge them any more, but I just thought it's not about the money, is it? It's what I do. Yeah, gives me a great feeling of sense of worth, I suppose. Makes a difference, makes a change, makes people smile, makes them laugh.
Well, and it's you're leaving quite a reputation in your midst as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I hope there is a certain longevity to the work that I paint. It's not a year or two unless, you know, a child is adamant that they don't want dinosaurs anymore and they want something else. But yeah, I've seen some previous muralists and their work has been on a wall for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just depends what the environment is. But I've also been invited back to a house that was sold by a previous client. And because I left my telephone number on email address or web address, the client contacted me, the new owner of the house, and wanted me to go along and extend the mural. So yeah, that was quite interesting.
Oh, that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
would you say that like what kind of socioeconomic area are you in? Are you in, is it a white collar area and they have the budgets and
My client base or where I live?
your client base?
It's extreme. It goes from one end to the other.
Yeah.
The people that have the least amount of money seem to want to spend the most amount of money. And again, there are people that the top end of the socio-economic group that do have a lot of money to spend, but don't always want to spend it. And there's people that just say, yeah, just do it, really. I want to give my kids everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's about, really. Trying to offer your children something that you were never, either your parents couldn't afford it for you, or, you know, it wasn't available.
When you made the transition from the corporate commercial world to the murals, how did you have to change how you approached your client and how you approached the business, or was it very similar?
I think it's the type of individual you are. I'm a pretty sociable person, and I like people. I like being with people, talking with people, joking with people. Yeah, and I found the domestic market rather than the corporate market probably less pretentious, more honest. So you could just, as long as you're honest about what you're going to do, how you're going to paint it, when you're going to turn up, when you're going to finish, everything's great. Just keep your customers informed every step of the way. Turn up when you say you're going to turn up. Don't let them down. If you need to disappear for a couple of hours, give them an explanation as to why, whether it's because you've got to go and buy some more materials, but don't just not show up. Because in some respects, you're like a contractor to some degree, where it's a carpenter, plumber, builder, but I'm a finisher, as it were. So, but having said that, if I get to do a child's nursery, I'll also offer mainstream decorating. That way, I'll get the whole project, and I don't have to wait for a decorator to go in before me to paint the ceilings, skirting boards, and doors. I can do the whole lot. So there's no time lapse between them doing their bit or me doing my bit.
So is that, when you say a mainstream decorator, are you talking about the foundational work that needs to be done on a wall?
Yeah, I don't know what the phrase is in America, but yeah, we just general decorating, basically.
Yeah, and then I see you also, it looks like you do faux finishing and whatnot. You have your stripes in the room behind your birds.
Yes. But those just, again, this was my house, my playground.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I wonder if that'll work. I'll try that.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the time, again, it's I'm looking at a texture or a lighting or the way something is lit naturally outside, and I think, how can I achieve that with paint
Yeah.
or a rendition of it? I wouldn't say an impressionist view, but it's along those lines. Really, you start to think, how can I paint the skin of a T-Rex or the fur of a panda? Uh, and surprisingly, I use a lot of sponges. I don't know about you, but I
Yeah.
find a lot of natural based sponges can offer all sorts of textural kind of examples
Well,
from,
especially on a large surface, right? As much free texture as you can get efficiently.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're very good. So I do use a lot of sponges.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should ask you about?
Uh, I don't know really. I find the community now, I mean, Instagram is amazing. There is so much talent on Instagram, from uh, three-dimensional work to painting styles across the whole world. I mean, I follow some people in Japan and they follow me. And what they're doing is completely, it's so Japanese in style,
Yeah.
but it's great. And I'm thinking, oh, I wish somebody would commission me to do something.
Yeah.
um, and like cookery, I follow loads of people that do cookery stuff. Uh, and people just doing metal work and iron work. Amazing. Um, but I find, I don't know whether it's because I'm using social media as a kind of communication tool, but I have more communication with people around the world than I do in this country. It seems a lot of the muralists don't really talk to each other much in the UK, unless you geographically are so far apart, there's no competition.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a couple of guys up north, and they are super talented, and we communicate and pass comment on each other's work. But people that tend to be closer to home, let's say within 20 miles, there's not much contact, um, either social media or anything else.
Yeah. I experienced that as well in some of the different circles I run in. Um, and what I love about social media is what is this? I wouldn't have started an interview show if if social media wasn't a thing, and I was kind of looking to move into some different arenas, and now I have these friends all over the world,
Yeah,
and I love it. I love it. I've got
good.
a
Yeah,
good buddy in Stockholm now. We speak frequently. Um, and like we were talking about Don Walker,
yeah,
Donald has become a fast friend, and we'll get the four of us together. Don always talks about the bald muralists, and so we'll get the four of us together to sit and have
yeah.
a
I
chat
could jump
soon.
on a
That'd be
plane. Yeah,
really nice. That'd be really nice.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Good.
so yeah, the social aspect of things is incredible. Um, so as we're coming to a wrap up,
Yeah.
what might be a piece or two, or maybe you've already covered it and you just want to emphasize or re-emphasize advice you might have for artists who want to make a living uh, designing and painting murals?
Um, oh, everyday work, really. I just think you've just got to keep your content as broad as possible. Um, Try not to specialize in one style. But this kind of goes back to when I was in advertising industry, stroke illustrators. if you made your style just so specific, you were limiting the outlet for your work, either book publishers or whatever. So it was always best to be as broad as possible. So it doesn't matter whether you're influenced by lots of different people. If you can achieve lots of different styles, then I think that'll allow you to offer different solutions to your client, because it ultimately is what they want. But get your clients involved in terms of the content, especially. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, I think that's all really good. I mean, the two things that you hit there that strike me are flexibility and style.
Yeah,
Builds opportunities, and
yeah,
it also builds skills that maybe you weren't even aware you could come to some level of mastery. And then, yeah, being able to engage and involve and communicate with your clients,
I think
that's
so.
the
Because
lifeblood, right?
they have got to look at your work a long time after you've left. You're looking at it for a couple of days or a week or 2 weeks or whatever, but they've got a few years or more to look at that line work or whatever it is. And obviously, if you're painting on such a vast level, you skip something because you're waiting for something to dry, but you've obviously got to go back there and finish it. But yeah, I think it's down to detail, really. I get chosen to do the type of work I do because I seem to have a reputation for the detail. And there are other things like branded characters that may go in and out of fashion very quickly, which are simpler to draw. But try and expose yourself to as many different textures that you can achieve in the paint, because somebody will ask you to paint something you've never painted before, whether it's a particular tree bark or the fur of an animal. I mean, looking at that tiger behind you, the texture required to paint the grasslands and the fur on that animal, you've just got to try and expose yourself to many different techniques. And every single job I do, I learn on the job, because I think, well, how am I going to achieve that effect? And I do actually say to myself, now, what would Don Walker do? And then my daughter said to me, because I said, he's a great guy, he's so talented. She said, but you are as well. I said, well, I can't paint like him. She says, no, but you paint like you. And I think, well, that's great, isn't it, really? I shouldn't kind of crucify myself because I don't have a skill set that I think I don't have a skill set I want, but maybe I do. But I think that's most creative people always underestimate themselves, or have this conscience of that they're not good enough or not talented enough. I don't know what it is.
I have a theory around that, and I think it's because we have to be so self-critical and so conscientious about the work we're doing that because we see the flaws and we see in our minds maybe where we've fallen short, we kind of project that onto the work and onto the value
also,
of it.
I think it's you on the wall, isn't it? You're kind of hanging yourself out to dry. If somebody's looking at that is you on a wall.
Yeah.
And a criticism of whatever it is you painted, it can become kind of personal, really.
Sure.
Whereas other professions don't necessarily fall prey to that, really.
Right. That's good stuff. Yeah. So, where can people find you and your work?
They can find me on most social media platforms, such as Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest. Again, it depends on the age group, really.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people migrated from Facebook to Instagram. But for me, that is very good because it's more image based, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, you can go through libraries or collections or videos very, very quickly. Whereas other social media platforms, you have to scroll through a lot of other stuff.
What's
Um,
your Instagram account?
it's Kids Art Murals. That's KIDS underscore ART underscore murals, MURALS.
Awesome. And is it the same on Facebook then?
It's the same on Facebook,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
without the underscore. And YouTube is also the same, Kids Art Murals, 3 separate words. There's part of my logo is a purple paint splat. Um,
Awesome.
so if you can find the purple paint splat, you should find me. And there's lots of short minute-long videos. And if I've done a lot of film work, I'll break it into, say, 1 or 2 parts
Yeah,
rather than boring and losing the audience too quickly. But,
that's awesome.
yeah, so it's good fun. It's a
Yeah.
tremendous way to earn a living. And somebody once said, if you find a job you like, you never work the rest of your life. And I believe that man was Confucius originally, and then it was borrowed by Mark Twain some years later.
And then it turned into James McDavitt. My thought
Oh,
he would say
yeah,
that as
okay,
well.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So if
No,
you
it's
find
good.
something, some good advice, steal it, right? And then share it.
Yes, absolutely. Share it as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being my guest. I really appreciate it. It's
Been
great to meet
absolutely
you.
fantastic, John. Yeah. Um, do it again sometime.
Yeah, we will. We will. That'll be good. Cheers. Ah, isn't Andy just a breath of fresh air? What a cool guy. I could you imagine having been one of his kids and having him painting these beautiful murals in your home and in your on your wall, and it's your mural from your dad. Just so amazing. I love the guy's heart. I love his creativity. I love how he approaches his business. That certainly he is offering a service and he is making a living, but he cares as much about the work as he does his clients. He gets to know them. He has dinner with them, and I that's just cool. That's really cool stuff, and it helps you to build relational equity with your customer and friendship. Those things, you can't really put a price on those things. They're pretty amazing. And I really appreciate him sharing about his techniques along with his craft. And I highly recommend that you give him a follow. And you can find all of his contact information a little bit earlier in the video, as you just heard, but you can find it down below too in this episode description. So, with that being said, I'm going to close out this episode. I'm going to wish you the best. And I hope that you get busy about the business of doing whatever it is that next thing you need to do to move into your creative career, whether it's actually a class that's about your creative process, where you're learning new skills, new techniques, maybe you're learning new technology, or you're pushing forward in sales and you're making that next call where maybe the next 10 calls are going to be no's, maybe the next 100 calls are going to be a no, but sales is about the numbers, and it's about getting your word out there. So you got to keep on calling and keep on calling, and have the grit and the fortitude to stick with it. And then if that's not going well, then you've got to figure out, is there something you could do better, or is there something maybe you're missing? So whatever those next steps are, uh, go ahead, get going on them, because this is just not going to shorten the time between you and making a living if you're waiting for somebody to come to you. Okay, you've got to take the action. All right, have an amazing week. Cheers.